Donald Trump slammed CBS News for the October 7th sit-down interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. He accused the network of, quote, deceitful editing. Here is a side-by-side comparison of the clip in question. Judge for yourself.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
CBS fired back at the allegation, calling it false. They released a statement in CBS News Magazine Sunday, reading in part, quote, when we edit any interview, whether a politician, an athlete, or movie star, we strive to be clear, accurate, and on point. The portion of her answer on 60 Minutes was more succinct, which allows time for other subjects in a wide-ranging 21-minute-long segment.
Trump's campaign spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, responded, quote, 60 Minutes just admitted to doing exactly what President Trump accused them of doing. This is another reminder of how hopelessly biased 60 Minutes is and how correct President Trump was to decline their invitation to be subjected to their fake news hackery. Release the transcript. Look, I think they're right. I think the edited version makes it seem like Kamala Harris gave a much swifter, stronger response to the question about Netanyahu not caring whether the administration is against what he's doing. The actual answer, the longer answer that is unedited, you saw her kind of fumbling through the response, making a claim that I don't think is true, that there were movements by Israel based on feedback we have given them. What specifically is she pointing to? Didn't we have a Rafah red line at one point? They went into Rafah anyway. We delayed, I think, one weapons shipment to them because we were mad. Other than that, it's been rubber stamped, even if we don't like what they're doing. So I'm not sure what has changed about the Israel response. I would like more detail from her. So I think that was not true, but it was a much more confused. So my point being, in the unedited portion, she makes a claim about how the administration has handled Israel that I do not think is true. In the edited version, she responds swiftly and is not seen to make that claim.
So when I watched this interview, I was also frustrated that it had been edited, but not clearly not for the same reasons that Donald Trump is frustrated. It is not unusual for any of these news shows to do these. They sit down, they walk around, they spend the day with them. What are you going to do? Do 24 hours of a show with Kamala Harris? Of course not. Of course, they didn't have that much time with her. But if you watch 60 Minutes, that's how all of their interviews are. I really didn't like his line of questioning. I thought he was using Republican talking points instead of being thoughtful as a reporter and, maybe asking clarification and pushing back. I think that gives opportunity for a better interview. That was my criticism watching it, is that it was overly edited in that it didn't really allow for a deeper discourse or a more thoughtful. Honestly, his questions just weren't thoughtful enough.
But this question is important because
it is, 100%.
And this is one of the only issues where there is some disagreement among Democrats on how to do. Like, on most policies, Democratic Party is in a lot of the same places. If you're a Democratic voter, you're in a lot of the same places. Here, there's some actual disagreement. You see it in, the range of how AOC talks about this issue to how John Fetterman talks about it and everything in between. There's a lack of unity on this subject. And that's why it would benefit for Kamala Harris to be more precise about whether or how her policy differs from Biden. So I think it's a very important question, and I think the unedited answer didn't make a lot of sense, and so people should hear about it.
So there's the criticism of how this interview was conducted in content as a reporter. There's the criticism of how it was edited, and then there's the criticism of her answer. So aside from her answer, which I do believe she needs to be much more clear on, at this stage, she should be very specific. She should understand or have some sort of more elaborative explanation. I know she's trying to keep the Zionists in the party happy, and she's trying to keep the most progressive members of the Democratic Party happy, including the Arab American community in the Rust Belt states. But she does need to have a better answer. With that being said, in terms of the editing of it, That happens.
Yeah.
That happens on every network. And Donald Trump is using that as ammunition. It's smart on his part because he's always blaming the media. But you know what? He does all
You're right. You're right that editing itself is not wrong. Obviously, we have to condense it. We make choices in terms of TV, in terms of writing. If I'm quoting something, if I get a statement from someone, say I'm writing about whatever I'm writing about, I don't always put the full quote in an article. I take the part of their quote that captures the sentiment of what they're saying, and you have to exercise judgment when you do that. But that can be subject to scrutiny. So this is a case where I don't dispute it's not even their right, their need to do some kind of editing in order to make television, in order to make journalism. I'm criticizing the editing choice they made in this case because I do think the response in the unedited version was something people should hear about.
And I, as a progressive, am criticizing his approach in this interview because pretty much every question was out of the Republican handbook, in which she had to defend, in some cases, completely bonkers claims, where he could be a thoughtful journalist, which I think he is at times. But in this situation, I just felt like it lacked creativity, it lacked depth, and then the editing, of course, for both sides, I think nobody was really happy. I don't think Democrats were happy with this interview either.
Well, they're not happy because they thought it was Republican talking points. They thought it was too harsh. I mean, I think she should face, a level of scrutiny she doesn't often face because she doesn't do a lot of hostile or confrontational interviews. She's done more. She did Fox. This was before. In fairness, she did Fox News, and I've said I think that was a good thing to do it because it does neutralize somewhat the criticism that she's not, really willing to wade into the arena, or she lacks the confidence in her abilities to do that. So fine, I'm glad she did it, and I think, the more that kind of thing is beneficial.
Totally, but CBS News is not supposed to be the ones doing those hostile interviews. That is Bret Baier's job, that is Fox News' job, and good for her for doing it. But 60 Minutes is supposed to be.
Well, it's their job to be supportive and
Well, they have a great investigative news team. You'd think that they'd be a little bit more.
I mean,
thoughtful.
I'm not
this guy is
overly.
making a lot of money. Come up with your own line of questioning. Don't just open up the RNC.
I actually I criticize 60 Minutes a lot. I would describe them as very agenda-driven for an agenda that is not my own, but is very much agenda-driven. They've had some. I would say bad reports, wildly exaggerating, engaging in moral panic over the spread of misinformation, over Havana syndrome. Did you see their Havana syndrome? Yeah. Havana syndrome there are a lot of legitimate inquiries into whether it exists at all. It has been debunked multiple times by a range from journalists to experts. It's okay to not trust journalists and experts, but from widely disparate ideological sources. And that they found some ticked off ex-whatever employee who's like, oh no, but I have Havana syndrome, and they put it forth so credulously.
But it was based on something where there were folks who were getting sick all around the world in State Departments, and they couldn't figure out what it was. So do you jump to the conclusion and say it's like radiation coming from Russia, in
sonic weapon?
Exactly.
It's like the fence
by the way,
on the island in Lost that stops the others from coming under attack.
The United States used to do that.
Do what?
They would do radiation in different areas against certain prisoners. So that's a fun one to look up. Puerto Rico, Pedro Albizu Campos. Never thought this segment would turn into that conversation.
Well, we need to fill some more time. Coming up next, we'll discuss the latest news concerning, this is not a happy story at all, the investigation into P. Diddy and all of the sexual misconduct. Stay tuned for that.